3. When I was 4, this is how things were. Our family lived in a crappy apartment in Manhattan. I didn't know it was crappy at the time because I didn't have our better apartment to compare it to yet. But there was exposed piping. That's no good. You don't want to raise your child in a house with exposed piping. I remember there was a green pipe and a red pipe and a white pipe gathered near the corner of the hallway just before the bathroom. And as soon as I could walk, I investigated them all. I walked up to them and put my palm about 2 millimeters away from each one to test if it was hot or cold. One was cold, one was hot, and the red one was really hot. 2 millimeters wasn't enough. I burned myself in it, and Dad, who hadn't realized it must only get hot in the afternoon, encased it in dark gray foam with duct tape, but duct tape never stopped me, and I thought the foam was fun to pick at and chew, so I picked it off and chewed it, and then the other kids came over to my house. I dared them to touch the re-exposed pipe. I told them anyone who came had to touch it, otherwise they were a pussy, which was a word I learned from Dad watching TV, which I thought was great because it was a word with 2 meanings. The cat that girls liked and the things you call people to make them do stuff. Just like chicken had 2 meanings, the bird that walked around and the white stuff you ate. Some people touched the hot pipe if you called them chicken as well. I had my own room, but I didn't like to be alone in it. The only room I liked to be in was the living room, under the table that held all the encyclopedias. I made it my little fort. I put a blanket over me and worked in there, with a light that Dad rigged up. I worked on maps. I loved maps. I knew that we lived in Manhattan, and I had a map of it. A hag-drawn 5-borough atlas with all the streets laid out. I knew exactly where we lived, on the corner of 53rd Street and 3rd Avenue. 3rd Avenue was a yellow street because it was an avenue, big and long and important. 53rd Street was a little white street that went across Manhattan. The streets went sideways and the avenues went up and down. That was all you had to remember. Dad helped me remember, too. When we went out for pancakes, he would ask, "Do you want them cut in streets or avenues, Craig?" And I'd go, "Yes!" And he'd cut the stack of pancakes on a grid, and we'd name each street and avenue as we went along, making sure to get 3rd Avenue and 53rd Street. It was so simple. If you were really advanced, like I was, duh, you knew the traffic on the even streets went east, east for even, and the odd streets went west, west is odd. Then, every bunch of streets, there was really fat yellow streets, like the avenues that went both ways. These were the famous streets: 42nd Street, 34th Street. The complete list from bottom up was Chambers Street, Canal Street, Houston Street, 14th Street, 23rd Street, 34th Street, 42nd Street, 57th Street, 72nd Street. There wasn't any big street in the 60s, but they got shafted. 79th Street, 86th Street, 96th Street, and then you were in Harlem, where Manhattan effectively ended for little white boys who made forts under encyclopedias and studied maps. As soon as I saw the Manhattan map, I wanted to draw it. I should be able to draw the place where I lived. So I asked Mom for tracing paper, and she got it for me, and I brought it into my fort, and I pointed the light right down on the first map on the Hagstrom Atlas, downtown, where Wall Street was and the stock market worked. The streets were crazy down there. They didn't have any kind of streets and avenues. They just had names. They looked like a game of pickup sticks. But before I could even worry about the streets, I had to get the land right. Manhattan was actually built on land. Sometimes when they were digging up the streets, you saw it down there, real dirt. And the land had a certain curve to it at the bottom of the island, like a dinosaur head, bumpy on the right and straight on the left, swooping majestic bottom. I held my tracing paper down and tried to trace the line of Lower Manhattan. I couldn't do it. I mean, it was ridiculous. My line didn't have anything to do with the real one. I didn't understand. I was holding the tracing paper steady. I looked at my small hand. "Stay still," I told it. I crumpled up the paper and tried again. The line wasn't right again. It didn't have the swoop. I crumpled up the paper and tried again. This line was even worse than before. Manhattan looked square. I tried again. Oh boy, now it looked like a duck. Crumple. Now it looked like a turd. Another word. I picked it from Dad. Crumple. Now it looked like a piece of fruit. It looked like everything but what it was supposed to look like. Manhattan. I couldn't do it. I didn't realize that when you had traced stuff, you're supposed to have a tracing table, lighted from below, and clamps to hold the paper straight, not a trembling 4-year-old hand. So I just thought I was a failure. They always said on TV you could do anything you wanted, but here I was trying to do something and it wasn't working. I would never be able to do it. I crumpled up the last piece of tracing paper and started sobbing, my head in my hands in my fort. Mom heard me. "Craig?" "What? Go away!" "What's wrong, honey?" "Don't open the curtain! Don't open it! I have things in here!" "Why are you crying? What's the matter?" "I can't do it!" "What's the matter?" "Nothing!" "Tell Mommy, come on, I'm going to open the blanket." "No!" I jumped at her face as she pulled the blanket aside, bringing it taut under the encyclopedias. Mom threw her hands up and held the books in place, saving both of us from getting clompered. A week later, she'd have Dad move the encyclopedias. With her occupied, I ran across the room, streaking tears, wanting to get to the bathroom, to sit down on the toilet with the light off and splash hot water in my face. But Mom was too quick. She shoved the encyclopedias back and lopped across the room, swooping me up in her thin arms with the elbow skin that you could pull down. I beat my palms against her. Craig, we do not hit Mommy! I can't do it! I can't do it! I can't do it! I hit her. What? She hugged me tight so I had no room to hit. What can't you do? I can't draw Manhattan! Huh? Mom drew her face up and away from me, looked me in the eyes. Is that what you're trying to do down here? I nodded, sniffled. You were trying to trace Manhattan with the tracing paper I bought you. I can't do it! Craig, no one can, she laughed. You can't just trace freehand. It's impossible. Then how do you make maps? Mom paused. See, someone can do it. They have equipment, Craig. They're grown-ups, and they have special tools that they use. Well, I need those tools. Craig? Let's buy them, honey. Do they cost a lot of money? Honey. Mom put me down on the sofa, which turned into a bed for her and Dad at night, and sat next to me. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't hitting anymore. My brain was all right back then. It didn't get stuck in ruts. Craig, she sighed and looked at me. I have an idea. Instead of spending your time trying to trace maps of Manhattan, why don't you make your own maps of imaginary places? And that was the closest I've ever gotten to an epiphany. I can make up my own city. I can use my own streets. I could put a river where I wanted. I could put the ocean where I wanted. I could put the bridges where I wanted, and I could put big highway right across the middle of town, like Manhattan should but didn't. I could make my own subway system. I could make my own street names. I could have my own grid stretching off the edges of my map. I smiled and hugged Mom. She got me thick paper, white construction paper. I went back under my fort and turned on the light and started on my first map. And I did that for the next 5 years. Whenever I was in class, I didn't doodle, I drew maps. Hundreds of them. When I finished, I crumpled them. It was making them that was important. I did cities in the ocean, cities with 2 rivers meeting in the middle, cities with 1 big river that bent, cities with bridges, crazy interchanges, circles, and boulevards. I made cities. That made me happy. That was my anchor. And until I turned 9 and turned to video games, that was what I wanted to be when I grew up. A map maker. 4. I wanted to make maps, I tell Dr. Minerva. Maps of what? Cities. On the computer? No, by hand. I see. I don't think there's much of a market for that. I smile. Maybe not, maybe so. What a shrink answer. I can't take maybes, I have to make money. We're going to talk more about money next time. We have to stop now. I look at the clock, 7:03. She always gives me an extra 3 minutes. What are you going to do when you leave, Craig? She always asks that. What am I going to do? I'm going to go home and freak out. I'm going to sit with my family and try not to talk about myself and what's wrong. I'm going to try and eat. I'm going to try and sleep. I dread it. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I'm not doing well in terms of being a functional human, you know. Hey, soldier, what's the matter? I can't eat and I can't sleep, sir. How about I pump you full of lead, soldier? Would that get you motivated? Can't say, sir. I'd probably still be unable to sleep or eat. Just a little bit heavier from the lead. Get up there and fight, soldier. The enemy is there. The enemy is too strong. I can't fight them. They're too smart. You're smart too, soldier. Not strong enough. So you're just gonna give up? That's the plan. I'm just gonna keep at it, I tell Dr. Minerva. That's all I can do. I'll keep at it and hope it gets better. Are you taking your medication? Yes. Are you seeing Dr. Barney? Dr. Barney is the psychopharmacologist. He's the one who prescribes me meds and sends me to people like Dr. Minerva. He's a trip on his own way, a little fat Santa with rings embedded in his fingers. Yes, later in this week. You know to do what he says? Yes, doctor, I'll always do what you say. I'll do what you all say. Here, I hand Dr. Minerva the check for my mom.